Hi, I'm Ava. I wasn't just uninvited from my own wedding. My parents banned me, said I'd bring shame to the family name. My sister wore the dress, took the spotlight, even claimed the business I built from scratch. I watched from the shadows while they toasted to lies. But then, a waiter leaned in, looked me dead in the eyes, and said 4 words that changed everything. Want to know what he said? The lights were soft, the flowers were perfect, and every detail had come together just as we planned. But none of it felt like mine. People always say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life, but I stood there, in that dress, under that arch, feeling like an actress in someone else's film. The guests rose. Cameras flashed. My groom smiled like I was everything he ever dreamed of. But all I could see were 2 empty chairs near the front. Where my mother should have been adjusting her corsage. Where my father should have sat with that proud look I'd waited for my whole life. Instead, nothing. Just air and absence. I smiled for the photos. I kissed when I was told. I danced through the first song like my heart wasn't cracking. The applause was warm, the room buzzing with congratulations. But the moment I heard it, "Miss Ava?" I turned. It wasn't Mrs. like everyone else had called me all day. It was the waiter. Young, familiar. And with that one word, everything came rushing back. It was 3 weeks before the wedding. The last time I stepped foot into my parents' house. Mom had set the table for dinner, just like always, but her eyes were cold before we even sat down. Dad didn't even pretend. He went straight in. "This isn't about love, Ava. It's about standards," he said, folding his napkin like this was business. "You're marrying beneath this family. You think we'll celebrate that?" I tried to breathe. To explain. "No one's beneath anyone, Dad. He treats me with, if you walk this path," he cut me off, "you walk it alone." Mom didn't argue. She just looked away. And that silence, it was louder than anything. Not rage. Not even disappointment. Just the feeling that I had ceased to be theirs. Like the person they raised had turned into a stranger. I left the house knowing that wasn't just the last visit before the wedding, it was the last, period. After that, everything changed. Picking out a dress alone in a bridal shop, smiling at the consultant while swallowing the lump in my throat. Making the guest list and leaving 2 gaping blank lines where mother of the bride and father of the bride should have gone. Everyone around me kept saying how beautiful it would be. But beauty has nothing to do with feeling wanted. My fiancé, bless him, did everything to keep me steady. He held my hand through fittings and tastings. But love, even deep love, doesn't always plug the hole left by being left behind. When my sister didn't even text me, I realized it wasn't just my parents sitting this out. It was the whole family. I wasn't just marrying a man without their blessing, I was marrying without a family at all. The reception was everything Pinterest dreams are made of. Twinkle lights. Candles. A jazz trio. Guests laughing, glasses clinking, uncles doing embarrassing things on the dance floor. I smiled so much my cheeks hurt. And yet, inside, I felt nothing. Aunt Marie, the only one who'd shown up from the bloodline, leaned in during the toast and said, "They don't know what they're missing." I smiled back, grateful, but also tired. Not just tired from the day, but from the effort of pretending it didn't hurt. I looked around at the older couples, hands intertwined, soft touches on backs, and wondered how many of them had fought to belong in the rooms they now owned. How many had ever sat where I was, celebrating a life they had to choose alone. That's when he came. The waiter. Maybe mid-20s. Neatly dressed, clean cut. He placed a glass of champagne in front of me with a nod, then softly said, "Welcome home, madam." I blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He smiled, eyes kind. "Carter. From Sycamore Street. My mom used to bring over peach pie when you babysat me." A flash of memory, sticky summer evenings, his curly hair bouncing as he ran through our sprinklers. "Some of us," he added gently, "never forgot who you are." That hit harder than any toast, any compliment, any carefully choreographed dance. I stepped outside with the champagne, cool air brushing against my face. Alone now, away from the cameras, I let the tears fall, not because I was broken, but because I had made it here and they didn't get to see. A week after I mailed out my save the date cards, I realized something was off. I'd sent a message in the family group chat, Just a simple, excited note with the wedding date and a picture of the venue. It wasn't grand or demanding. Just, would love to have you there. Days passed. No replies. No emojis. Not even a thumbs up. Silence doesn't always come as a surprise, sometimes it just confirms what you already know. But then a text popped up from my cousin Ashley, meant for someone else. It was a screenshot of a conversation, a group chat planning my sister's engagement party. Decorations, dates, guest lists. Lively back and forth. My name wasn't in it. Not as a participant. Not even mentioned. It wasn't just silence anymore. It was a mission. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been deleted. I called my mother the next day. I kept my tone calm, because I still wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. Her voice was steady, measured. This wedding, it's not about us. Why would we make it ours? Not angry. Not emotional. Just businesslike. Like she was handling paperwork. I asked if she'd seen my message. She paused. We saw it, she finally said. But we didn't want to complicate anything. Complicate? I repeated. Is that what I am now? A beat of silence. Then, Ava, not everything needs to be a confrontation. That word sat in my chest like a stone. Later that evening, my older brother sent a separate text. Short. Cold. Some things are better without drama. Better. Without me. It stopped being about disappointment a long time ago. This was calculation. This was choice. And what hurt more than their words was their precision. They'd organized an entire event for my sister, the same week I'd invited them to mine. They made a choice to celebrate one daughter and ignore the other. You learn to stop hoping for love in places where silence echoes the loudest. Back in my apartment, I sat on the floor with pen and a notebook. We were sketching out our guest list, trying to balance his sprawling, warm family with the blanks on my side. He looked over at me gently. Should I put your folks down as tentative? I didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, no one from my side. He didn't flinch. Just nodded and wrote it down. That small gesture, not asking more, not trying to fix it, broke me in the best and worst way. There's this thing people say when they try to comfort you: you don't lose family when they walk away. You lose them when they pretend you never existed. I used to think that was just poetic. Now I knew it was factual. People kept asking me at work, at the salon, at the bakery where we ordered the cake, where are your parents in all this? I smiled. Said they were busy. Said they'd join later. Said anything that kept me from having to tell the truth, that they'd opted out. 3 days later, I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer. Thought it was another delivery. But when I opened the door, there she was, Mrs. Norrell. My childhood piano teacher, standing there in a blue sweater, holding a small bag and a wedding card. I saw your name in the announcements, she said, her voice still soft and kind after all these years. Thought you might need a bit of the past to walk you into the future. Inside the bag was a music box. Old, wooden, delicate. She said it used to sit on her piano when I was a kid, the one I'd always wind up before practice. We sat in my kitchen. She sipped tea. I didn't have to explain anything. She didn't ask. Before she left, she touched my hand and said, "You've always made a home for others, Ava. You deserve one for yourself now." It was the first time in weeks I felt like someone saw me, not as a burden, not as a mistake, but as me. Later that night, I sat at my desk trying to write vows. I stared at the blank page. But the words that came weren't for Ben. Not at first. I wrote to myself about learning to hold love without begging for it. About choosing peace when family chooses pride. They taught me how to love, I wrote, but not how to stop loving when it hurt. A tear dropped onto the paper. I didn't wipe it. Just let it stain the ink. I was about to shut the laptop when my phone buzzed. It was a notification. My sister had just posted, "Surprise family brunch." A photo of smiling faces, people I used to call mine. My name was tagged. Then untagged. Turns out, being erased was only the beginning. It was late again, that strange hour when silence hums louder than sound. I couldn't sleep. My mind felt restless, chewing on the same thoughts it had the night before. So I did what I shouldn't have, reached for my phone. I scrolled through faces I hadn't seen in years, people pretending to be happy, pretending to be fine. Then, there it was, my sister's post. A family brunch. The restaurant looked familiar, the one our parents always picked for birthdays. The caption read, "Everyone who matters." For a second, I just stared at it. My name had been tagged. Then untagged. The notification flashed and disappeared, but not before I saw it. A momentary inclusion, and an immediate deletion. In the comments, Aunt Grace had written, "Where's Ava?" The post had over 50 likes, but no one answered her. The silence underneath that question was louder than any insult. I felt something sink deep in my chest. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was that hollow kind of knowing, when you realize people you love have turned you into a secret. It wasn't just that I was left out. It was that they needed people to see I was left out. I set my phone face down and stared at the ceiling. The glow from the screen still painted the room in cold light. My mind kept replaying that caption, those smiles, that one missing tag, me. My thumb hovered over my sister's contact name. I typed, "You didn't have to do that." Then I erased it. Typed again, "I saw your post." Erased it. Started over, "Why would you tag me just to take it back?" Erase that too. Every version made me sound desperate, the very thing they wanted me to look like. I'd learned the hard way that confrontation only gives people new ammunition. I tried before, years ago, at Thanksgiving, and somehow I became the villain. "You always make things harder than they need to be, Ava," my mother had said. That line still stung. So instead of reaching out to them, I texted Ben. They posted another photo. I wrote, "I was tagged, then untagged." He replied within seconds. "They're showing you exactly who they are. Believe them." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't comforting either. But it was true. I read that message over and over until it stopped hurting. By morning, I'd slipped into my routine. Makeup, coffee, silence. I stood in front of the mirror, blending concealer under my eyes, pretending I looked rested. Pretending I looked unbothered. At work, my co-worker Janine caught me in the hallway. "Ava. I saw your engagement photos," she said, beaming. "You two look perfect together." I smiled back. "Thanks." She kept talking, but I only half heard her. I'd gotten so good at masking pain it almost felt like a skill. That's what most women learn, how to wear invisible armor. A little powder over exhaustion, a practice smile over rejection. Later that afternoon, while waiting for an email to load, I opened my Instagram. My finger hovered over an old family photo, Christmas 2 years ago. My dad holding a glass of wine, my sister laughing, Mom pretending everything was fine. I stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. That night, I found myself thinking about a package I'd sent to my sister months ago. A photo album I'd made by hand, our childhood in pictures. The beach trips, our first pets, the inside jokes. I'd written little notes under each one. "You always laughed hardest at this. Remember this day?" She never thanked me. Never even mentioned it. Now, zooming in on her new photo, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. There, in the corner of the brunch table, wrapped in silver paper with a gold ribbon, was the gift. The album. Unopened. That sight hit me harder than her caption. I could almost feel the weight of it in my hands again. The hope I'd put inside it. You can't force someone to remember what they've already decided to forget. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee gone cold. I pulled up my wedding outline, ceremony notes, music choices, order of events. My eyes stopped at one line, "Parents' blessing." I stared at it. Then pressed backspace until it was gone. It was small, but it changed everything. For the first time, the ceremony felt like mine, not a performance waiting for approval that would never come. It hurt, cutting that tradition out. But pain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's proof you've stopped waiting for the wrong people to change. I whispered out loud, "I will not beg anyone to stand beside me when I've stood alone this long." I hit send on the updated ceremony email. A knock came at the door just as the confirmation tone chimed. The timing almost felt scripted. I opened it to find a courier holding a cream-colored envelope. My parents' address was written in my mother's handwriting, elegant, distant, familiar. It wasn't a wedding RSVP. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind they use for announcements. I turned it over in my hands and felt my stomach tighten. Whatever this was, it wasn't an apology. It was a warning. I stepped into the banquet hall and was hit by the kind of silence that doesn't come from a lack of sound, but from being watched. Judged. The lights were already up. Chairs neatly lined, flowers in place, and the MC was warming up on the mic. I kept waiting to hear my name, any hint of my part in the program. Nothing. He rehearsed the opening. Tonight, we honor family, those who raised us, shaped us, stood by us. His eyes skimmed over me without pause. I stood just off stage, hands cold, heart tighter than it had been in weeks. I'd practiced every word of my speech, memorized my breaths between each line. Now I stood there knowing they had brought me this far, just to erase me in plain sight. Back in the makeshift dressing room they'd assigned me, probably once a storage closet, I sat on a fold-out chair and opened the envelope I'd sealed weeks ago. My speech. Crisp paper, black ink. I began to read aloud, barely whispering at first. Some of us weren't raised to be seen, we had to fight to be heard. I owe no one for existing. And yet, I still came to love, to show up, to believe. I paused. Took a breath. I used to think forgiveness meant letting things go. Now I think it just means choosing peace over performance. And that, my voice broke just slightly, is how I found my way back home. Each sentence was stitched with the parts of me they never saw. Words not meant to impress, but to tell the truth, my truth. I had folded these lines like prayers, thinking maybe this time, they listen. My phone buzzed. A notification from the wedding planners group chat lit the screen. Program updated, Ava's role removed. I blinked. Read it again. Removed. My throat tightened. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I stepped outside into the dim hall, called the coordinator. He picked up after 3 rings. Ava, yeah, hey. Listen. It's a weird miscommunication thing. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. He didn't even finish the lie. I see, I said, flat. Not angry. Not loud. Just done. I hung up. Slid the phone into my bag. My speech rested under my hand like it still had a heartbeat. I stayed there for a minute, maybe 2, then walked back into the hall. And that's when I saw it. The printed program posted on a bulletin board near the entry. Full color mock-up. Time slots, names. Mine wasn't there. Instead, the final segment read, closing words from family representatives. And right below that, in bold, written by the bride's family. As if I had no name. As if I had no voice. Later that night, scrolling through my feed in the backseat of the Uber, I saw the digital version posted by my sister. She captioned it, grateful to be surrounded by those who truly lift us. One of her friends commented, who's Ava? Thought she was the sister? Another replied, maybe she's just not that close. Happens in families. I felt nothing and everything all at once. I turned off the screen. Looked out the window. It wasn't the exclusion that hurt the most. It was the precision. The way they knew exactly how to make me invisible, without ever raising their voice. At home, I slipped off my heels. Turned off the lights. The whole house was quiet. I sat on the couch, unzipped my bag, and pulled out the speech again. I read it once more, this time with no tears. Just breath. Just stillness. I thought about calling them. About sending an email. About standing up at the wedding and saying it anyway. But something inside me whispered. No, not tonight. Instead, I opened the voice recorder on my phone. Took a deep breath and spoke the words like they were being etched into stone. I saved the file, backed it up in the cloud, and emailed it to myself with the subject line, in case they ever ask. That would be enough, for now. I turned off my phone. Then it buzzed again. An unknown number. No message, just a YouTube link. Underneath it, one line of text, you should see who re-uploaded your speech onto a secret channel. The mail came just after I'd finished cleaning up lunch. There it was, gold foil envelope, heavy in my hand, with no return address. At first glance, it looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. Classy. Perfect. Cold. For a moment, I let my thumb linger on the flap. Maybe it was my mother. Maybe a gesture to make things right, however late. I opened it carefully. What I pulled out wasn't a reconciliation. It was an invitation, to a private celebration hosted by my sister. A pre-reception for those closest to the bride and groom. Same night as my rehearsal dinner. Tucked inside was a note in her handwriting: "No one wants to miss the real celebration." I stared at it, then read it again, slower. This wasn't confusion. This was calculation. A warning disguised as courtesy. Wrapped in gold, but sharp as glass. It didn't sting, it sliced. Later that evening, Ben came home to find the envelope open on the counter. I didn't say a word. I just slid it across the table. He read it once. Looked at me. "You okay?" "I should be," I said. "I'm not." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's a stupid move, Betty. Maybe we should just ignore it." "No." I leaned forward. "If I ignore it, it becomes normal. They want to erase me in real time, and I'm supposed to smile through it?" He didn't argue. He just nodded. "They untagged me. They cut my speech. And now this." I sat back, arms crossed, heart pacing like it wanted out of my chest. "It's not just one insult. It's a campaign." Ben exhaled. "You're right. So, what now?" "I'm not sure yet. But I'm done being surprised." The next morning, I called Tessa. She answered on the second ring. "Hey," she said, already sounding nervous. "You got the invite?" I did. "I didn't know they were doing it that night." "I swear I believe you. Can we meet?" We sat at a park not far from her place, the kind of spot families bring toddlers and dogs and picnic baskets. We didn't bring any of that. Just silence and hard truths. Tessa pulled her coat tight. "There's more." "Go on." "They've been calling your wedding a trial run. Behind your back. Like it's practice." I looked at her. "Practice for what?" "For theirs," she said, eyes darting down. "Your sister said, let's see if she even makes it to the altar." I blinked slowly, jaw locked. "I thought maybe it was a joke," Tessa added quickly. "But now with this invite." "No." I cut in. "It's not a joke. It's not a mistake. It is not family being clumsy. It's targeted." Tessa touched my arm. "I didn't want to tell you, but I figured you'd rather hear it from someone honest." I would. And I did. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my guest list laid out. One by one, I crossed out names. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. Anyone who attended my sister's party instead of my rehearsal dinner wasn't coming to the wedding. Period. Then I called the venue. "Hi, I need to move my rehearsal dinner. Same date. Different place. Smaller, more private." The woman on the other end said she'd take care of it. She didn't ask why. I appreciated that. I hung up, then pulled my speech from the drawer. I folded it, placed it in a new envelope, and wrote the name of the only person I truly trusted with it, Maya, my college roommate. She'd read it if I couldn't. If they tried to block me again, someone would still speak the truth. Around midnight, the apartment was still. I lit a candle. Not for tradition. For focus. I pulled out the vows I'd written, lines meant for Ben's eyes only. But tonight, I added one more line to the bottom: "I will never again chase love that hurts to hold." I folded the page and slipped it into a plain envelope. On the front, I wrote, "For me." It was the most honest vow I'd ever made. No audience. No applause. Just me, alone in my truth. I stood up, blew out the candle, and was about to head to bed when my phone lit up. Unknown caller. No, not unknown. Unfamiliar. My father's name. After years of silence, he was calling. And for the first time in a very long time, I picked up. I'd pulled out a box of old pictures that afternoon. Albums I hadn't touched in years, letters yellowed at the edges. I flipped slowly until I saw it, a graduation photo. Only it wasn't mine. The image was my own, me in cap and gown, but it was framed under my sister's name in a polished frame on her shelf. My own photo stolen, repurposed. I stared at it, stunned. A betrayal that felt like erasure. I remembered graduation day. Mom cried, Dad beamed. I scanned the crowd hoping to see their pride. Now I wondered, why am I invisible even in my own history? I got in the car before the shock froze me entirely. The sky was turning pink with dusk. I drove out to my father's house, steady hands on the wheel, mind replaying that stolen image. He answered the door after a long silence. His face looked older under soft light. I held the frame out, the photo, the label, voice unsteady. Why would you do this? He looked at it, his eyes flicked away. It's not what it seems, he said. I pressed. You talked to them when they deleted me. Why didn't you speak to me first? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The hinges of his silence creaked. He didn't deny, he didn't explain. He just turned and walked inside, leaving the door half shut behind me. I stood on the threshold, heart pounding. Turning away felt like surrender, but I couldn't force him to hear me. In the car, tears blurred the windshield. I let them come. I remembered the dinners, the quiet looks, the times I tried and was ignored. I built strength over years of absence, but I never wanted to have to do it alone. I gripped the steering wheel. I clenched my jaw. If he wouldn't defend me, then I would defend myself. Back home, my phone rang, Corinne's name flashed. I hesitated, then answered. She sounded calm. Dad told me what you did. He's embarrassed, Ava. I didn't trust her calm. What exactly did he tell you? She laughed, not a light laugh, but a cutting one. That you were manipulating family, trying to play victim. I'm just tired of watching this mess. I heard the accusation implied, I am the problem. Don't speak to me anymore, I said softly. Don't pretend you care. She hung up. My chest ached. Betrayal stacked on betrayal. At my desk, I drew open a locked drawer and pulled out a small collection of originals, my own signed graduation photo, diploma certificate, a letter of academic recognition. I compared it to what they had in my sister's frame. Small differences, the handwriting of Ava was mine, the signature line, the date margin. Corinne couldn't fake that. I grabbed my phone and texted Ben, I've got what I need. When the time comes, it speaks for me. I locked the originals in my safe. Later that night, a soft knock echoed. I opened the door to see Mr. Frost, the former housekeeper, standing there with an envelope in hand. He looked older now, kind in his eyes. He held the envelope out. I think you deserve to know what really happened, he said quietly. The morning sun poured through the glass windows of Sable Hearth, my restaurant, the one I'd built from long nights, burned fingers, and forgotten birthdays. Reporters crowded outside for the grand opening of the new branch. It should have been the proudest day of my career. Then I saw the newspaper headline, Corinne Vale expands her culinary empire. Her picture. My restaurant. Her name, under my dream. I stood frozen, the sound of cameras clicking outside like hammers in my chest. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to keep reading. Her dedication to the craft, the article said, has made her one of the most inspiring women in the industry. They had rewritten my story. Again. I walked through the crowd, smiling for formality, shaking hands, thanking guests, until I saw my PR manager by the champagne table, avoiding my eyes. I walked straight toward her. What the hell happened? I asked quietly, but firm. She fumbled with her phone. There must have been a misprint. The press sometimes, misprint? I interrupted. Her photo, her name, her quotes, this isn't a typo. You let them hand her my life. The manager swallowed hard. Corinne reached out yesterday. Said she wanted to make sure your family's image stayed consistent. She said you were too busy to respond. Consistent? I said, holding back a bitter laugh. You mean convenient. You were afraid of losing your job. Her silence confirmed it. I turned away, steadying my breath. I wouldn't give them a scene here. Not today. By early afternoon, I sat in the office of my attorney, Julia Knox, a sharp, no-nonsense woman whose desk looked like it could cut someone. I laid down my files, tax records, recipes, registrations. She listened without interruption. After a few clicks on her computer, she turned the screen toward me. Ava, I need you to see this. On the document was a trust contract, amended 2 years ago, listing Corinne Vale as majority beneficiary of Sable Hearth Holdings. That's impossible, I said. I founded this company. I funded it. The license, the brand, everything's under my name. Julia's tone softened but stayed measured. It was shifted quietly. The property deed went through a family trust your father controlled. On paper, she owns 51%. My body went cold. So this wasn't a misprint. It's theft. Yes, she said. Legal, calculated theft. I stared at the papers spread between us. I felt something settle deep inside me, not despair, not anger, but resolve. They stole more than a business. They stole my name. Julia leaned forward. You have proof. The originals. That's your weapon. Driving home, I kept my phone silent. My reflection in the car window looked calm, but inside, everything was shifting. I had two choices now: go public or fight in silence. Ben was waiting for me at home. He took one look at my face and said, "What did they do this time?" I showed him the article. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "If you go public, it'll explode. They'll smear you harder." "I know," I said. "But if I don't, I'll stay erased." He hesitated. "You sure you can handle that kind of storm?" "I've been standing in their storm my whole life," I said. "The difference now is, I've got shelter." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I drafted a statement, short, factual, sharp. I built this company. I wrote every recipe, signed every check, fought every fire. The truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs daylight. I called my friend Cressida. "I'm hosting a press preview tomorrow. I need you there." "Always," she said. Then I called Destry, a videographer I trusted. "Bring your crew. Record everything. I'm showing documents, original contracts, registrations, all of it." I hung up and exhaled. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. When I was younger, I used to think silence was the noble thing: let people think what they want, stay dignified. But dignity doesn't come from swallowing truth. It comes from standing firm while the world lies about you. I rehearsed my words in the mirror one last time: I will not beg to be seen. I will simply remove the shadows. As I stepped out of Julia's building the next morning, the city hummed with its usual rhythm: horns, chatter, sunlight bouncing off glass. Then I saw it. A small envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. I pulled it free, unfolded the paper. In neat handwriting, one line: "You should have stayed silent." I looked around. No one in sight. But I knew, the war had just turned visible. The morning of the wedding was thick with silence. I arrived early, before the noise, before the curated smiles. The reception hall was already dressed up: white drapes, blush roses, the scent of candle wax still fresh. I walked the length of the room slowly, letting the quiet scrape against my nerves. Empty chairs waited like polite liars. The floral arch stood tall, built for photo ops, not truth. On the signage above the entrance, Corinne's name was printed in looping gold cursive. A celebration by Corinne Vale. Not ours. Not mine. Just hers. A server passed by and gave a tight smile, eyes flitting to the sign. I caught it. Everyone noticed. No one said it. In my head, I said it to myself again and again: they won't sit me at their table? Then they'll have to stand when I speak. I wasn't there for decoration. I came with facts. I made my way to the podium they'd set up in the corner for toasts. Not that anyone asked me to speak. The AV team was still setting up, flipping through slides that would loop behind Corinne's thank you speech. I stopped cold when I saw the branding. It was mine. The swirling motif, the stylized V, the font pairing, I knew every inch. I had scribbled those elements into a notebook 2 years ago. The guest next to me leaned into their date and said just loud enough, "Wasn't that Ava's design?" I stepped forward. My heart was steady. I reached for the microphone. "Excuse me," I said calmly. The room quieted, awkward but curious. "I'd like to share something with you all, briefly." I held up the printed draft sheets I'd brought in my bag, each with original timestamps, signatures, and the design mock-ups. I passed them to the AV tech, who hesitated, then loaded them. Slide after slide came on the screen: rough sketches, color palettes, taglines, all dated a year before Corinne had touched a single branding deck. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. People began murmuring, heads turning. I let it hang. I built this. Every bit. And now you know. I turned from the podium just as Destry entered, dressed like part of the catering crew, carrying a tray. He leaned close as he passed, his voice barely above a breath. "Welcome home, madam." My chest tightened, breath caught in my throat. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But the room heard him. Or at least, they felt the shift. Every camera phone lifted. Eyes locked in. My name, not Corinne's, was being whispered now. Not in pity. In recognition. I took a beat. Closed my eyes. Then faced them. "I won't drag anyone here through family drama," I said, voice firm. "But I will remind you, legacies don't belong to those who claim them loudest. They belong to those who built them." I clicked the next slide. The original contract, notarized. then the original logo file metadata. You erased me from every stage, every interview, every press kit. But not today. My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to rise. I spoke like someone who had finally remembered her worth. You don't get to erase me. Not today. Not ever. I looked out into the crowd. Some shifted in their seats. A few guests glanced at Corinne, whose jaw was locked tight. She didn't stand. She didn't speak. Not a word. I stepped down. On my way to the foyer, I passed servers who gave short nods. Some relatives lowered their gaze. A few guests I'd never met gave a soft smile. One mouthed, "Good for you." I didn't need their approval. But I saw something change. And I kept walking. Outside the main hall, I paused, letting the cooler air touch my skin. My hand still held the microphone, my fingers marked with ink from the printouts. I let out a long breath. Behind me, the room stayed quiet. And then the door closed. The last of the laughter drifted off like a candle flickering out. Guests filtered into their cars, shoes in hand, jackets slung over shoulders, murmuring about babysitters and long drives home. A few waved. Most didn't. I stayed seated on the stone bench in the garden behind the venue, where the buzz of champagne and the clatter of silverware couldn't reach. I kicked off my heels and leaned back, letting the moonlight settle across the silk of my dress. The roses overhead were wilting slightly, but I liked them better that way, honest. I thought about every step it took to get here. Every door slammed, every silent dinner, every time I was asked to just be supportive while someone else took the credit. And I realized I didn't feel empty. The ache I'd carried for decades was still there. But it wasn't sharp anymore. It had softened into something like peace. I didn't hear the car pull up at first. It was the staff member who whispered it into my ear, like she didn't want to spook the moment. "Your parents just arrived." I didn't move. "Now?" I asked. She nodded and stepped away. The garden felt suddenly smaller. At the far gate, headlights dimmed. The doors opened. My mother stepped out first, then my father. No tuxedos. No dramatic entrances. They looked like themselves, older, unsure, not styled for show. Her hair slightly windblown, his shirt untucked under a blazer. I didn't stand. I didn't run toward them. They walked the path slowly. Not like people trying to fix something, more like they finally understood what needed fixing. They reached me, and for a moment we just stood there. No one said my name. "No, we're proud of you." Just a small velvet box in my mother's hand. She held it out. "You always kept the door open for us," she said softly. "Now we'd like to do the same." Inside was a single key. I knew it right away. My childhood bedroom. I hadn't seen that room in over 20 years. The key had been on my father's ring, untouched, kept in a drawer no one opened. She didn't say she was sorry. But her eyes, tired, damp, did. My father finally spoke. "We were wrong. But we see you now." No excuses. Just presence. And maybe that was more powerful than any apology. I didn't cry. I didn't hug them. I looked down at the key and then back at them. "Thank you," I said. "But the woman I am today, she was built in the silence you left behind." They didn't flinch. I accepted the key. Not to unlock any room. But to remind myself, I had always been capable of opening my own doors. I stood and walked them to the gate. My mother reached to touch my arm. I let her. Just briefly. They asked nothing of me, not to come by, not to reconnect, not even to call. And I didn't offer any promises. The choice to come was theirs. The choice to leave? Mine. They walked back toward the car. No dramatic goodbyes. Just a look over the shoulder, the kind that says maybe one day, but also we'll understand if not. Destry found me a few minutes later. He didn't say anything, just took my hand. We stood like that, quiet. I leaned against him. The garden was mostly dark now, the path lit only by a few solar lights and the glow from the ballroom windows. "I don't know what's next," I whispered. "I don't think you need to," he said. "You're not lost anymore." We walked together through the now empty hall. No clinking glasses. No spotlight. No curated playlist. Just us. Just enough. Later, in the parking lot, I tucked the key into my purse, not because I wanted to go back. But because I'd earned it.